Welcome, dear friends, to HomeoMitra Vartaalap with Dr. Suraj Dhirwani. Uh, and today's Vartaalap is going to be about a topic which is not usually part of medical practice, but yet very relevant to it, which is all about digital content in the medical industry. Uh, Dr. Suraj, allow me to introduce you briefly so that the audience will know more about you. Dr. Suraj Dhirwani is a passionate homeopath and a tech entrepreneur who has been working in the area of healthcare and IT, especially bridging the gap between doctors and patients for the past decade. He is a third generation doctor who has been practicing homeopathy across clinics under his brand Sunshine Homeopathy Clinic in Mumbai for the better half of the past 2 decades. Sorry, for the better part of the past 2 decades. During that period, he co-founded Technomedics, a boutique firm in the healthcare IT space. Along with his team of doctors at Technomedics, Dr. Suraj has engaged and empowered hundreds of doctors and healthcare wellness companies in the realm of content creation, cyber security, digital presence, and digital marketing. He has been a consultant and the man behind curtains for many well-known doctors and famous events by various organizations. His vision for better healthcare and IT led to a series of EHR apps for doctors and patients and a high-risk pregnancy app for MOHFW, the government of Himachal Pradesh. His experience in the field has led to unique engagement as a consultant on major projects for the government of Andhra Pradesh and with top-tier NGOs and various UNICEF-supported projects. So with this, I welcome you, Dr. Suraj, to today's Vartala. Uh, so, can you tell us something about yourself? There is something called there is always a story in history. So, if you could just tell us about yourself, why you chose to enter into the tech industry and why the field of content particularly.
Uh, uh, I understand that history is always an important perspective. More in today's times, we find that history holds the key to a lot of things. I'll be very frank with you. I didn't enter. Okay, I didn't. It wasn't a conscious choice, so to speak. I was always a tech enthusiast even before I joined college to become a homeopath, and I was clear from my eighth standard that I wanted to be a homeopath. So I was very clear that this is where I want to be. This is the particular college I want to join. By the blessings of the well-wishers and the elders, I made that happen. But I was always into tech. Typically, the kind of guy who opened up his CPU when I was, I don't know, like 14, 15 years old and blew up the motherboard in trying to experiment in replacing the battery and stuff like that. So from that to probably trying to create some kind of PPT or base code when I was 19 or 20 with the typical Windows 95 or XP PC back then. So tech comes from there, which when I was part of the medical college, somewhere it was picked up on, and I was the favorite for all departments to kind of set up the projector, do small PPTs, and that's where that I was always into tech. Funny thing, so this is where that part engineering thing comes. In my first year of medical college, I took part in a Counter Strike competition at engineering college in Andheri, and I won there. Okay, so there was a tech side always to it, but it was my teachers, my real well-wishers who saw some potential in that, and after college or during college also encouraged me to take down that path. Generally, I'm not going to try and take names throughout this session, but I would be wrong to not take the name of Dr. Mamtoro. Was probably one of the first people out of college who called me up and said, you have to do this particular tech thing for me, and you have to do it on a chargeable basis. I want to pay you for it. And I said, sir, I mean, till date, we all bow down to him as our guru and mentor in many ways. But he was a very sweet, kind enough to make sure I start my journey there. Then there were a lot of other teachers also who saw some potential, and we started our first content-based project in 2009. But that would be a history of Technomedics. If you want my history, then the history is very simple. I always felt there is this gap. All of us as doctors, as batchmates, when we were talking, when we were being discussing things, I always felt there was this tech illiteracy, so to speak. ये को एक stigma जैसा था. Hey, if I knew PCM, I would be an engineer. I know PCB, so I am in biology and I am as a doctor. But 2005 onwards, I felt that there is a tech aspect to medicine, that is not, that's like a wave that's coming through that is not being tapped or explored. There's nothing in the syllabus, so to speak. So if I am to give you like a history, then the Nokia 6600 was the first Symbian kind of phone that most of us had in our hands. And I'm talking 2005, right? So we're talking about 19 years ago from today. There was this one small Java file, jar file, which was this medical dictionary file, which you could install in that. And instead of carrying this Dorland's pocket dictionary, which I still have, we would whip this out in the OPD and try and search some terms as young graduates, to be graduates. And that was all the rage in the college. I had like everybody coming and कि यार सूरज वो फाइल देना, मतलब वो फाइल हमारे फोन में भी डाल के देना. And then it started with advising them that look, this is not a Symbian phone, you need to get a Symbian phone and install. And I had some, just like you, I had some really nice colleagues, nice juniors who were very apt with it. And it kind of, we kept experimenting, we kept exploring tech and medicine, whether it was the USB powered stethoscope where you could take the lung sounds, hear the lung sounds and extract it onto a pen drive and stuff like that. So that's the kind of time we're talking about. That's the history, and that really is ancient history. We are talking of dial-up modem days, right? So 2009, with my first laptop, I would connect it via a cable to a phone and get 2G internet there when we weren't at 3G. But yeah, I think that's where the history of my history is always since there, and we are there. But I think you'll have to be a little more specific if the audience is looking for something more specific.
So this is quite a history that you have, and especially starting from something that was a core interest, rather a hobby, or something very of a passion, and then converting into a full-time venture, and not just a venture, but you have employed so many people, and you have worked for big names, and done some commendable work. So uh, it's quite a journey.
That would be the technomedics journey that I would not credit solely to myself. Uh, Employed is not a term I would like to use. I would like to use the term empowered in some sense. When we started off, again, I think 2009, we got a big content based project. Okay. So content was, we weren't aware. I used to write for my college magazine even before medical college. So even in school, my stuff was published. Then in 11th, 12th grade, I was in different colleges. It was published. I was, accolades would keep flowing in. I was honored on the platform and stuff like that. But I was a regular feature throughout all my 5.5 years at college in the magazine. There were at least 1 or 2 articles or poems that were by me. Someone somewhere felt that you can write, and there were others like me. We also had an Orkut community back then for the writers of that particular college. So I'm that old. We are, that's where the journey somewhere starts, and we got an opportunity to do content. I was very clear about one thing, something that I think you also resonate with very well, that alone we can walk, together we can run, right? And like they say, when the they call it Ubuntu in Africa. There's a concept. Again, a great teacher had also taught me that, but somewhere in my heart I always said that when the lion feasts, the whole jungle, when the lion hunts, the whole jungle feasts, kind of a thing. So when this project came through, I realized it was very big. Back then it was in lakhs, and we had a lot of content to create. So I approached my best friends to kind of be a part of it, whom I thought were good with content. And since then, we've followed that principle. Many of them over the last 10 or 12 years, people who have been associated with us as Technomedics. We started as Team Technomedics. It wasn't a registered company then. We registered in 2013. So we've done a decade as a company as well, right? So many of us who've been a part of the Technomedics journey were first time introduced to the world of content with Technomedics. They have gone on to kind of branch out in their own way and do fantastic content by themselves. We are, we still keep in touch. Some of them are still thankful that they kind of got into content and explored it different. So content is very vast. I'm sure we'll get to that, right? So content is very vast. But then there was one thing that happened, which is very relevant to HomeoMitra today, because this Vartaalap is also for doctors and homeopaths, is we all go to medical college to become doctors, right? Nobody goes there with the intent that, hey, I'm going to, go to college and then do an MBA and get into something else. But right. The journey of being a doctor is a little challenging, as we all know. You can't expect that you're going to start a clinic and the first day you're going to have a patient walking in. Even if that happens, it's usually a relative who's not going to pay, right? So getting the rent every month and keeping that spirit alive inside of you to sit and practice is not easy. And what happened is we formed a very great community and camaraderie during college days, right? So we had a lot of colleagues who were not practicing due to a lot of restraints. Someone got married, in-laws are not, paying them or allowing them to pay for the rent or whatever. So when we did this team Technomedics and we realized, hey, there's more work out there than we can handle, or we are also at our clinic. We started branching out by offering what was, I mean, today in the pandemic, it was work from home, but we always called it work from clinic. Okay. For us, I mean, it's not a hashtag. Back then, there were no hashtags, but it was always work from clinic that, hey, if you're practicing and we want to support your practice, you need an X amount of money to make the rent per month, like maybe 3K or something. We would recommend them to buy like a small netbook, which was back then a 10.1-inch laptop, because you couldn't really sit with a full-fledged laptop in a polyclinic. You wouldn't have that kind of luxury of space, plus the weight and the heft. And almost everyone used some software on their laptops back then. I'm sure that holds true now,
Yes.
but it's more mobile phone based. So they would anyway have a laptop to run that particular repertorization software or something. And we would say, we're going to send you a file. You got to type something, we'll reproof it. And at the end of the month, you get paid. And you got to assure us you're going to take that money towards paying your rent and make sure you don't drop out of practice, right? So that's how I think we have been blessed by the well-wishers of so many people who have joined us over the years. They would be with us for a year and a half, 2 years, their practice was set. And they would drop us a message that, what, I'm getting a little busy these days with patients. Is it okay if I refer my junior to join your team instead of me? And we would, groom them, and the journey has been on. I cannot take credit for that all by myself. My partner in Technomedics and of course life, she makes it possible. As a team, it has become possible to achieve this over the years. And good work, just like with your practice, it takes time to build. So it spreads by word of mouth. You've probably never seen us advertise for anything till date, and we've not felt the need to, because the word of mouth keeps spreading. And that's where these so-called big projects that you're saying, have come through in some sense. And I have to thank the team who stands by me, my wife, Dr. Tuti, to say that, okay, we're going to take a challenge, something we probably don't know anything about, and go at it head on and deliver the results, and, kind of keep getting better results and keep getting better work. Foray into territories we had no idea of. Back then, they used to pay us like per inch of a transcription file. That was the transcription journey back then. And we said, no, this seems a little beneath the doctors. Let's do something better. And to take on any kind of content today, the Technomedics team writes for retail, writes for education, writes for jewelry brands, apart from big names that let's not take the names, but yeah, apart from the big e-commerce and e-medicine and all of those platforms, some of them you're fairly familiar with, but that's how that kind of becomes a journey to go into.
Two things now I gather from what you just described is, one is the reason and the fundamentals for your success. And the second thing is, I mean, and why is that so? Is because you have not just, like you rightly said, you have empowered people. Because I know for a homeopathic doctor, the only, and I'll be very frank with you, and if those of you who agree with me, tell me, that the only way to actually get the rent for the first few months or few years, whatever it may take to break even, is going to work in an allopathic hospital. I'm not against that. I'm not saying that is wrong. But then this is, also another option. I personally find it more appealing in the sense because I have myself been in that area to make sure that I break even with my rent. And a little beyond the homeopathic aspect, this is a very unique business model wherein everyone is benefiting. So that's really something that is great.
See, the use of the word business model right now, what you just used, business. Honestly, this didn't become a business model till like probably the pandemic. Okay. I recently did my MBA after probably 10, 12 years of doing my MD. So my second master's degree came after almost a decade, because my team kept coming back to me and saying, sir, there's more we should be doing here, right? over 15 years, myself or my wife, we were all in our practice, and technomedics should keep doing some things. During that time, we did the EHR app. I was also around, I think, 2015, for 2 years, I was the editor of a medical legal journal. Again, some of my old team members I brought forth into that project, gave them also some role and some work to kind of be with. It was a nice big project, ran for 2 years. Again, medical legal turned out to be such an important thing which most people were not aware of back then. But through this journey, it always was that we weren't really into business. It was a social entrepreneurship. And we were so clear with our team that if we are earning 100, this is how it's split all through us. And it was always very transparent. It still is very transparent, because I firmly believe transparency leads to trust, and trust is the core of any team. So we always looked at it as a team, and we never really looked at it as a business model. Only through the pandemic, when these very team members were kind of stuck, practice was difficult, as we all know.
Yes.
Initially, more so for homeopaths also at times. I mean, because many didn't have access. So we know that. Let's not get into the sad part of things, but that's when everyone said this is now like the primary source of income for us. So if you could kind of optimize it for us, it would be better. I wouldn't say we sat down with them, but we kept having meetings because, lockdown and all of that. But few ideas came across, and we started turning it up into a business model. Over the last 2 or 3 years, it's developed into something very different, which I probably look back and think that if it was the case maybe 10 years ago, we would be at a very different level today. But like I said, it's the well-wishers and the blessings of all those who have been associated with us. We have had MBBS students who, while pursuing their NEET, work with us for like a year. And while, they're like, sir, we've given our exams now, we are on our way. And they'll be like, this is my junior, he's going to join. We're like, okay, fine. But now we've had to try and optimize our processes, have a little more stringent check on who's joining, who's not joining, have a better training program for, novice writers who have no idea of what content creation is. Because content is a very vast field, very, very vast field. We just look at a very small part of it. Again, I have nothing against those. We've also done those jobs, whether it's a allopathic, meaning RMO-ship at somewhere. At the peak, I used to do I was assistant to 3 doctors. Morning 8 to 12 with one, and then morning 8 to 12 would last until 1 o'clock, then have lunch in the bus from 1 to 2 o'clock, 2 to 6 with another, and the other was just like 15 minutes away, so 6 to 6:15 with the last doctor, which would end by about 11:30, 12 in the night, and the cycle would kind of go on. But that was a learning phase. For the earning phase, nothing beats being able to sit at your clinic and be more and more available to your patients so that they can kind of come in whenever they want. That's how in your initial days you need to kind of be there for your practice. And therefore this, I think, worked for a lot of people. I would say we've worked with close to 100 plus doctors till date in the journey. And touch wood, we know some of them who are in the US, and some of them are practicing well. Some of them have branched out entirely into content and left practice and are focusing only on content as well. So that also happens, and we are happy for them. We wish them all the best.
Great. So coming to the topic, if you can just tell us something about content, something which is very basic and fundamental, but also something that is helpful for someone who is advanced in that area.
Too vast. See, content, when we think today in today's perspective, we only think blogs and articles, website is content, maybe social media content is the whole upcoming thing. For someone very basic, for someone who is not acquainted with the term content at all, right, and has no idea that what sectors go into it. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, also content was there, but it was mostly related to books, right? People would write chapters. There were copywriters back then as well. There were ghostwriters back then as well. So many doctors whose names published in big books were, partly written by someone, assistants, and then that content would go through. 20 years ago, we had very few people who brought out the web content, pages and pages and pages that were archived in search, and they were the rulers of the search engine optimization back then. Any result you type and they are the first hits you get, right? And that was content. Then of course you had your magazines and publications. So the digital age changed the way we look at content. Because now it was not just articles or extracts or research material or published journals. There were blogs, there were patient experiences, there were patient testimonials, there were user-generated content where if you're a wellness or a healthcare brand, you are asking your users to write about your experience of your journey, and that is also content. The main part for a doctor from a very doctor's perspective. So today we might have an audience that is predominantly doctors, but I want to try and tell the guys out there, or everyone who's listening, that when we look at it just from a doctor perspective, it's this small, but there is a huge thing called the healthcare and wellness industry, right? Which is also your MedTech devices, whether it's your wearables, whether it's your, tracking devices, ECGs and all of that. There's your skincare, beauty care, men care, female care products. There's your other accessories that come under medical care, whether it is from the ancillaries like physiotherapy, speech therapy. Then there are the hospitals. There are the insurance companies out here, who have plans to pitch, who have underwriting to happen, who have policies to formulate. There's the whole entire public governance space where there is documentation to be done. There is content that needs to be created, which is uniform across the country, translated into multiple languages. As a doctor, as a medical person, you become a subject matter expert if you're good at writing and you have core knowledge of medicine, and you combine together. All of these industries are available for you as opportunities in some sense. In some places, you'll need more knowledge of SEO, which is search engine optimization and the Google ranking and keywords and NLP terms. In some places, you'll need more idea of public health and politically correct language. In your research material, you need to have medical writing skills. So content is vast. This is just writing. We are not even getting into video scripts, video animations, social media content, copy, reels, and all of that. So all of that now comes under the purview of creative content, so to speak, and not even close to medical advertising. So you have some big companies that hire doctors just to proofread their material. But I myself know of some doctors who have gone completely into that content and are the ones writing the ad copy, so to speak. And they're doing a fantastic job at that. So that's content broadly, very broadly. Based on what the audience wants or what you have in mind, we can dissect into some smaller pieces.
So, there are two spectrums I see, or the two ends of the spectrum. One is there is no escaping content, even if you're a doctor. Gone are those days when you only use a stethoscope or, check the pulse. And the other extreme is making that into a complete profession within itself as a subject expert. I mean, not just a subject, but you can either become like you said, a writer or a content creator, or a subject expert who would then, review the content and scrutinize it.
Both work.
Yes. How exactly do we apply this content in, let's say, a doctor's practice, in a hospital? Mostly these two areas, because these are the two areas where doctors are most commonly associated with, personal practice or hospital.
So we'll go personal practice first, we'll go hospital second, okay? Because both are extremely different entities, and India as a market, and I'm using the term market here because we're now getting into somewhere kind of like a business model, right? So India market is very different, where doctors do practice stand alone significantly. Everyone has their clinic. Sometimes doctor couples or doctor families together have a whole clinic thing happening, with the ENT and a physiotherapist and a dentist all combined together in from one family, and it's like under one brand. An individual doctor is his or her own brand, right? A polyclinic is already a brand where there are individual doctors who are coming in at small intervals, and they don't own the brand, but the brand will want to advertise to increase footfalls. A hospital is again a very big entity, a hospital or a nursing home, governed by a different set of regulations, medico-legally as well as from the advertising council perspective. Because there the doctors are employees in some sense. They are either salaried or they are based on something, or they are providing their service. So it's actually the hospital who wants to talk about its brand. So here you have one doctor who wants to talk about his or her brand. Like Mostly those are also our clients whom we have serviced across. So they would want content for predominantly their Google business page. They want to write something there that is SEO compatible and comes up in the search results. So you're searching for a new ENT near me and that should come up. So there they want content where they want to describe themselves and the services that they provide. Now for every doctor, even for a homeopath, when we have homeopathic doctors as our clients, they are sometimes all over the place, right? They want to talk of because they do that. I mean, they are very skilled in a lot of things. So they want to talk of autism spectrum disorders. At the same time, they want to talk of acne also. They want to talk of hair fall. At the same time, they want to talk of hirsutism and PCOD also. So they would want to put out all these things. But how do you go about kind of talking all of it without making it too lengthy, without making it too boring, interesting for the audience to read, without, and while making it proper SEO optimized as well. So most people come for the Google My Business page. Then there is their Facebook and Instagram social media account. That's what they come up with next. Some of them come up and say, we want a website, but they're not really sure what they want in the website. They just like, no, we want a website and we want to take appointments and we want to take payment and all of that. But what are we putting out there? And, now with the migratory population. So now specifically the context of homeopaths now, even for MBBS, the doctor who gets married and shifts, right? Because married to a person who has a migratory, meaning a job, and shifting to a new city, for that doctor to restart that practice in a new city, this is where they think they want to harness the power of internet, right? Because now they've
Yes.
started practice there. So that is the biggest challenge they keep coming to us with. So we have to take a very different perspective in branding such a person and giving them the opportunity to kind of be visible out there on the wide internet space. So these three areas predominantly where doctors want to talk of content, but they are not sure what they should put. For social media, unfortunately or fortunately, meaning many times they end up going to a social media person who has very little expertise in the medical side of things. So then you end up with your, standard templatized things that they do, and they spend quite a bomb on it, and it doesn't really translate to leads. Now, I'm going to be using terminology here, which comes from pure business perspective, with no offense to the practice of medicine, which even we like to keep very pure, right? So earlier, what it was content was how are you going to make your brochure or leaflet, which makes your services page, and you go around to other doctors in your area and you distribute that, or you do a medical camp and again you need to distribute this and you make a flyer and we would put it into newspapers and have it inserted and stuff like that, right? So that was one era of content. Now that same thing is now in some sense digital, but you want to know your target audience and make sure that post reaches the right target audience in some sense. But this is now not the same. There you were putting that material into their face. Now they have to come up onto that material. It has to come up in their feed. It has to come up in their search organically. And earlier you were targeting the doctors by saying, please refer to us. Now you're targeting the patients directly, potential patients who are searching for something, and they need to kind of find that, you are there. And then you want to kind of highlight about me, about my educational qualifications, about the treated, cases that we've treated, and how do you put out cured cases without making it too technical. So the average doctor often tries to balance this, that I don't want this case to seem like a very frivolous case to my peers and my colleagues, but at the same time, I want the potential patient who's reading this to be able to connect to it and feel, hey, this happens to me too. So this is the doctor who can perhaps treat me, and I want to try and visit this doctor, right? So that's called like that funnel you want to build, such that they click on book an appointment now or get in touch with me now, kind of a thing. So that is where the doctor's perspective comes predominantly in creating content. Social media content also, as I mentioned, it follows a very templatized thing for most doctors, and you can look at it and say, I probably know which graphics guy they've gone to, or social media. Then they're going to that same set of reels or same set of posts, and sometimes they take a strategy where they want to try talking about the homeopathy medicines, for example. And I often want to tell those doctors, and in case some of them are listening today, please be very clear of who your target audience is, right? If you're putting that out there to share with us other homeopaths, we love you for it. We love exchanging knowledge and we love exchanging that information. HomeoMitra also puts out such nice things that we love hearing, like today's Gelsemium post, was perfect given the heat wave that has just started, right? So we love that. But if your target audience is patients and you're trying to get more patients, putting out homeopathy remedies and what they do is not really the right approach, to that. So that
Agreed. Yes.
is, yeah. So that is what we would like to, kind of counsel the doctors, or this is my take-home message in some sense for them, that choose your strategy, right? Whom are you reaching out to? Whom are you talking to? It's a faceless audience. You don't know who's that guy or girl who's scrolling your post, whether she's a 25-year-old
True.
PCOD female who's just got her sonography report, or is just trying to battling weight loss and is just comes across your post and connects with it. So keep it real, keep it there. So that's there. Then coming to the brands of hospitals. Now here the challenge is, firstly, there's no budget constraint as opposed to a doctor. You get a doctor, they're always very tight budget. And I know, I mean, we've all been through that, right?
True.
We don't understand marketing in that sense. So we feel, how are we going to spend X amount of money where we are not even sure we are going to convert into 2 or 3 patients? And is it really worth it? Most of us fall for that trap, even for some of these big IT or market aggregator services who come to our doorstep with their pamphlets, and we subscribe to their services. And at the end of the year, we feel very cheated that this didn't turn out to anything. They gave us that star and that badge and put us on top of that post. But did that really bring about patients? Right? So for the hospitals, you often have a very structured hierarchy. There's an officer, or there's a person in charge of the marketing department. There's someone who's going to approve your budgets. There's a CEO who's earmarked that these are the activities we are going to do through the year, which would include perhaps camps, perhaps reels, perhaps social media posts, perhaps website content, perhaps collaborations with some influencers, collabs with some doctors, and have the doctor being recorded and speaking that stroke prevention at this particular hospital is so and so, and
Mhm.
this new machine we have launched, or we've got the latest MRI machine. So there your context is completely different. There is often, when we deal with path labs, when we deal with hospitals, when we deal with small nursing homes, again the target audience differentiation has to be: is it a B2B exercise or is it a B2C? B2B meaning there is a lab who wants to target other corporates and tell them that they offer great packages for their entire set of employees. The branding, the language, the tonality has to be completely different, right? And B2C means I want to get to a patient and say, 12 in the night, book a blood test. I'm going to be there at your doorstep, someone from our doorstep tomorrow morning. And 8 o'clock, you're going to have a blood test done. So it's a completely different way of how you want to present that content. In both cases, one thing is very common, and I would like to put this out there: don't chase trends. Don't be a fad, because SEO and these algorithms for Facebook, Instagram, they are subject to change every 3 months, every 6 months. There is a massive change that happens. So be true to your brand. If you keep chasing just the trend as a doctor, if you started out by putting out homeopathy medicine posts, then suddenly you're talking only PCOD, then suddenly you're talking of side effects of tattoos, and you've gone on to towards all the way towards HIV or something, you are chasing the wrong outcomes, right? You're not being consistent as a brand. I totally understand if some doctors amongst those hearing today want to turn out to be health influencers. So they start talking about everything. Like we have some ENT doctor who's talking of orthopedics as well, right? We have some, yeah. So then you have someone talking of hair fall, even though they are from a different field, right? And they're trying to be health influencers. That's their choice to be, but that's the exception and not the rule. Not every doctor out there is going to be able to have 10,000 followers, no matter what content you put out. And at the end of those 10,000 followers, how many are patients? Right? So likes don't translate to patients always. So content has to be in such a way that you be focused that which is the patient demographic that you're talking to. Are you talking to the pediatric patients? And are you talking to concerned mothers and you want to try and convince them to approach you for their child for their treatment? Are you talking to the corporate lifestyle guy who's suffering from lifestyle disorders, and you want to tell them about your fitness plans, your wellness plans, your nutrition plans, and all of that? So that specifying your target audience in this content for both of these contexts is the most important and first key factor to have. And that's where that their content journey should start, which is where you need a content consultant who is understanding of where your domain is coming from. So you can't go to a random marketing agency and expect that you will get the same outcomes, because there are laws in place, there are guidelines in place. You can't do certain things. Certain things are just not right to do as doctors, right? In chasing X number of likes or followers, you put out patients' personal details, or you dramatize the case a little bit too much, put out reports claiming that you've treated infertility, and put out certain reports which any doctor will tell you, boss, this is normal, your medicine has done nothing, it's just the natural course of way. But you're trying to fool innocent people, the normal public, in trying to claim that, oh, you were this godlike person who managed to treat infertility with your medicines. Then you have to learn to draw the line there. So you have to have someone guiding you in some sense, rather than just going out, putting videos every day, putting some post every day. You create like a deck for 30 days and start putting stuff every day, and then you worry, aaj ek hi like aaya, aaj teen hi like aaya, and then that's the challenge. So you need to understand that where you're coming out from.
Agreed. Now, that's a holistic explanation to about what is the application of content in the medical industry. Now, I recall an instance where I was working with an organization and I asked an allopathic doctor to create some video on a particular topic, and I oriented him. This is a health education video. But the answer that I got is our, the community of doctors, or what do you call, uh, uh, uh,
Fraternity.
how do we have the MCH,
Okay, the body
council,
governing
the
body.
council,
Council.
and the governing body would not really approve of it, despite of me telling him this is a health awareness video. It's a health education video, because I have a bit of an understanding of the medical legal aspects of content. Now, if you could elaborate on, what are the marketing, legal, and ethical issues with respect, especially to digital content, with this example in mind.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, this is much needed. Okay. Law, legal, law, ethics. We tend to use these words interchangeably. Okay. But they are different. So ethics are more personally governed, more society driven also at times. I'll come to a couple of great examples that immediately come to mind. But let's be very clear at the onset. Every governing body has some very clear guidelines, very clear laws, very clear framework about what you can do, what you cannot do, what kind of board you put out there. Your governing body also decides. At the same time, your local municipal corporation also has some guidelines about that, and some charges also. Right? So that is also one kind of advertisement that's happening, not just social media or that. Very recently, Government of India, rather SEBI, came out with certain guidelines for the fintech influencers. Right? Those who were giving out financial advice. We realized there was a lot of stock manipulation also happening, and credit card games happening, points being kind of gamed and all of that. I am at the liberty to say this, that the government is well cognizant of the fact that health influencers are growing by abundance and are not always right, legal. Right? You could have someone with a non-medical degree, not even remotely related to the medical profession, talking about and promoting certain hair fall supplements or certain protein supplements, so to speak, and causing more trouble. If you are aware, ICMR recently came out with a very major directive against protein supplements, which kind of sent the fitness world into a bit of a tizzy, and they were like, how can they talk of that? But it was essentially, if you ask me, it was chor ki dadi mein tinka type of situation. Right? The doctors were also relieved. We know of some doctors who are manufacturing their own protein brands and selling it by the kilos, which also happens. So there is no smoke without fire. And to say that, "Arey, aisa kaisa directive la diya," or how are they being so harsh? This is not fair. There is a reason why that has happened. It's happened over a very long time. My recent interaction with someone very senior in the ministry has assured me that the the guidelines for health tech influencers is just around the corner. Like they already have it in place. There is a reason that they've not been able to kind of release it in some sense. So what happened to fintech might happen to health tech very soon, or health influencers very soon, very soon. So that's one warning out there for a lot of people who might be watching this in some sense. Guidelines are very clear. First and foremost, please, please, please do not use the word cure anywhere, right? And I am not being biased when I know that 90% of our audience today might be homeopaths who honestly enjoy a sheltered gray area. So again, like I mentioned, I've been part of a medical legal organization for a very long time, and must have been through maybe like 500 to 600 Supreme Court and High Court cases. Out of that, there were hardly any on homeopaths. Those were also only on a few big ones who claimed cure for hair fall or some skin condition, and then it didn't happen and it backfired. So medical legally, there are certain guidelines, there are certain consent forms, there are certain boundaries that you must draw in your mind while you're typing content, while you're writing content, while you're speaking content, and not cross into that. There are gray areas. If you feel that the risk reward ratio is worth it and you want to toe that line for those few extra followers or that sensational reel, that's your individual choice as a person. I do not wish ill, but then, it's a gray area. So you might get away with it, or you might face some consequences. But just because someone got away with it does not make it the norm for others also to follow suit and try and toe those. You keep towing those lines, the government is going to pull in those lines, right? We've had cases where the licenses have been cancelled. We've had cases where there has been legal action against certain things, and we've had some doctors also go to jail. At the same time, we've also had people who continue to do that by creating a body or a corporate entity which is often mirrored in their own name, but it's called a corporate entity. I think something very similar was nicely highlighted in one of those new Netflix series. Again, I don't want to take a name, but if you've seen it, you know that, how the body, the corporate entity was blamed, and the fellow said, I am not the one, it's the entity that's done it, right? So they do that. That is one gray area that they keep towing. I want to try and tell that this question of law gets completely sidetracked if you focus on ethics. If as doctors, when we are so ethical with what we do, the whole profession is about ethics, right? The whole fundamental exchange of services here is deep rooted into trust and ethics. If we will just take that one moment to ask ourselves before we put out any post, is this ethical? Would I like it if I was the patient here? Or is it fair to the community and my fraternity to speak of something like this? Sometimes in the race for getting that one sensational viral video, we have doctors trying to expose the truth about some other field of practice and say that क्या आपको पता है ये injection में ये भी होता है. So that, I think if we could just be truthful and answerable to ourselves before we put out something like that, this whole question of legality would not come through. So I'm talking of self-governance in some way. We are all doctors. We all know what we've been through. We've all had a very similar journey. We've all, faced those hardships, and we all want patients. We all want results. We all want what is best. We all want to try and cure or at least bring relief to our patients. But in claiming that, or like I mentioned, that one incident about, putting out reports that are clearly not your doing or clearly a little fake or exaggerated. Now, I'll give you a very, very good example when it comes to this same ethics question. Very popular persona. I wouldn't go far to call her as an actress, but she did a big stunt for cervical cancer, right? Now somewhere they felt that, we are bringing cervical cancer awareness. But there was significant backlash even from the advertising industry, even from the media industry. And of course, the common people since then have kind of seen a downhill trajectory for that particular persona. Is that the way you want to go? Sensationalism or creating awareness. We understand. We're creating videos for sensitive topics like HIV, AIDS, HPV. We're doing it for big organizations, government organizations. There is a particular protocol. We are scrutinized 7 times across departments to make sure we are not using a single terminology that is, that incites a wrong reaction. Even to talk about, mutually agreeable sexual intercourse, we've had to word it differently so many times. So there are enough guidelines in place, but yet you'll have these kind of examples, whether it is the piles ad behind a BST bus, which have thankfully stopped, or those, stickers pasted at night in your local trains, which also have thankfully decreased, because the money that was being spent there is now often being spent on very crude and cringy advertisements on social media now. I mean, I want to use the word cringe. Some of them, when we view it as doctors, and I'm not talking about from a very elitist point of view, I'm just saying, just think to yourself, as a patient, if someone had taken your photo, put that, and put this whole sensational voiceover, ye dekhiye, inka haal pehle aur ab hamara ye treatment ke baad. Do you want to be that? Let's, God forbid, you are also in a position, you're suffering, you approach a fellow colleague and you see that post that same colleague has next day put you up on Instagram as a trophy for his deeds. Would you rather not just go out and praise that colleague and say, yaar, ye isne bahut sahi kaam kiya tha, aap bhi isi ke paas jao, you'll refer 10 patients? And what's more important, treating the patients and making more patients better, or getting 200, 2000, 3000 thumbs ups and likes on that post at the expense of what? So ethics plays a major role, and as a country, as Indians, if we could only be a little more ethical in everything we do, I think the laws will not be needed to be so strict, and we can kind of let them focus on other things.
Such a simple exercise. Before we post anything, just ask ourselves whether we are doing the right thing, whether it is not going to harm anyone, the content is responsible. Such simple measures, and it can prevent a whole lot of trouble in the future. On that note, I remember discussing with a senior homeopath, and I would ask him that, and I asked him because he himself said that we still don't have answers to many things in homeopathy. Now, this is coming towards the homeopathic aspect. And I said, I have a patient of cold cough or I have a patient of cancer. When they ask me, is it going to get all right? I have only one answer. I don't know. We will start the medicines, we will see the results, and then we'll come to know. In the past, these have been the experiences, and only so much research is available. To that extent, I go and make a full disclosure. Then I realized that may have also kind of ensured that patients don't come to me. But then, when I asked this question to him, am I doing the right thing? He said, this is exactly the thing that you should do. A senior homeopath. So then that time I was assured. With that in mind, what is it that is, with the content for the homeopathic industry, what would you like to tell about that?
Long ago. So there's now you've touched up a bit of a raw now. This is the grayest of gray areas. It's tricky. It's tricky because to some extent we don't have as many guidelines. I will want to quote this one Supreme Court lawyer who gave me this pearl of an advice. And full respect to that man, I still kind of seek him out when I'm in a bit of a dilemma. And when we were discussing these medical legal cases, really great Supreme Court lawyer, the kind of wisdom that you have, that those lawyers you expect them to have. They said, क्या डॉक्टर साहब आप लोग क्या ये होम्योपैथ वाले क्यों टेंशन लेते हो मेडिकल लीगल का, क्या कर लेते हो आप मेडिकल लीगल में, आप बता ही नहीं सकते कि आपकी दवाई काम करती है, तो कोई पेशेंट ये कैसे बताएगा कि काम नहीं किया. It hit me bad for a moment there. Okay, and he was coming purely from a medical legal perspective. He was saying, if you have a case in court where XYZ patient claims that you did not cure him of so and so thing, that comes to standing only if you claim to have cured him in the first place, right? And while we are confident, we have our master's teachings to guide us from over the last 250 years, we have the evolution of disease happening. We have the same organon that is still guiding us about what should be our core approach to treating a person. And the first line itself uses the word cure. But at the same time, the organon is full of the word heal, right? And if we don't get clouded by our own egoistic race to be proven number one, or kind of compensate for the insecurities that we have built over the years as a homeopath, because we always feel that we've been kind of stepmotherly treatment, we've been looked down upon, we've not been able to prove ourselves. We tend to over exaggerate our claims. We tend to toe that line beyond into the other side. We try to bring down the modern physician, allopathic doctors. We claim some things that we should not be claiming. We get into their territory to try and talk of things, and we start pointing fingers without while forgetting that three of them do point back to us the day someone tries to ask us. No, I'm not saying we haven't had research. You and me are both familiar with a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of good research, and they also try to highlight through their journals the great research that is happening even in the field of homeopathy. But I still feel, as an allopathic doctor, how frequently they read their journals and research. The homeopaths are not really reading their own research as well. It's only certain WhatsApp groups that kind of highlight that, hey, this is happening. And then they realize, oh, this has also been researched, whether it is the nanoparticles at BARC, which was big, which made it to the front page. But there's so much happening every day. So I really respect you for your approach and the guidance that senior homeopath has given you. Let's not try to claim something that we are not. Circling back to what I mentioned about trust and transparency for our company, it stems from the fact that at the core we were doctors, right? And we are doctors. So as a doctor-patient relationship is also built on trust and transparency. If you go to a surgical perspective, whether it is a dentist or from a surgeon's branch, they have this huge consent form, huge, medical legally compliant, where they are liable to explain to the patient what is the expected outcomes, what are the risks, what may not work, what are the unfavorable outcomes possible. We seldom explain that as homeopaths. And you've been part of groups where consent has been discussed for at least some incurable diseases. I think you were very right in taking your approach to say that we should inform them, and it should be an informed decision between the patient and a doctor to get on to treatment of a particular thing. So to quote everything, to put it without using the word cure, what you should promise is to put in the best efforts possible to reach the best possible outcomes. That is your promise to yourself as a doctor in the pursuit of medicine, and to the patient who's sitting across the table expecting some amount of relief from you. Keep them in the loop with your decisions to say that, I think this is it, but I'm not sure. So let's take a second opinion, and which is where we need to work as we as in we homeopaths need to work as one piece of this big machinery of medicine. We try to work very separately as a separate cog that functions autonomously, and that is not the case. When we join the team that is working towards the betterment of the patient and health of the world, whether it's your physiotherapist, whether it's your speech therapist, whether it's your GP, whether it's your cardiologist, whether it's your orthopedic surgeon, and we are blessed to have some people like that who guide us. If you don't be part of that team and you try to work separately, you will be doing injustice to the patient. If you be part of the team, the patient will definitely benefit, because when you're not sure, you'll have someone else guiding you. You'll have someone holistically working towards the betterment of the patient. Such a patient will never backfire or feel cheated by his doctor, his or her doctor, and will never feel that I was promised something and I was not delivered. So you have to be very patient-centric in your approach. You have to be very transparent to your patient, which is what you've mentioned and is right. And that transparency over a period of time builds trust. Let's say you're stumped with a cancer case, which happens these days. A lot of patients, because cancer is on the rise, as we know, post-COVID, and patients are seeking whatever best they can. So they are coming towards homeopathy for cancer. That's where, we've at our place, we've got onco-nutrition also coming in with my wife, Kruti, looking at onco-nutrition in that sense. But when they come to you for hope, don't just, some people try and take it up as a challenge. Arey, dekhte hai, वैसे भी incurable है, वैसे भी क्या होगा? And then they try to claim कि इतना सा भी side effect का benefit हो गया तो वो homeopathy ने कर दिया. Don't be that person. Don't try to take your patient as an experiment. Treat your patient with respect. Make it clear to them that, look, I'm not really sure that this particular rare cancer, I can't really find any cases, but homeopathy does not work on the diagnosis alone. It works on symptomatology. We'll treat you as a person. We will not ask you to stop your chemo or radio. We'll be in touch with your oncologist, continue your physiotherapy, continue your nutrition advice, and talk to us about the symptoms, whether it's your hair fall, nausea, vomiting, chills, low immunity, whatever, and we'll work upon that. And this is how we are going to track your progress. So make it documented. Once again, it comes to content. Honestly, it comes to content, because if you're
True.
structured in your thought
Together. Yes.
process, you'll have a very clear protocol and pro forma that this is how we are tracking your progress as a patient, and you will see the difference over the months. Then it's not the onus on the doctor to prove that, hey, I treated you right. The patient themselves becomes part of that healing journey, and they can see that they are getting better. That's where the trust comes in. And once there is trust, unless you break the trust, it's a great journey. It's a great healing journey for both the people or all the people involved. So that's where I would say that that's how we should approach it.
Agreed. And there were so many offshoots in the discussion today that I wish to have more discussions on, right from a subject of entrepreneurship to clinical practice to the medical ethics in practice. There are so many offshoots we can hopefully discuss on a later date. The second thing is that now I realize about the last point that you spoke on, is that it is the personality of the doctor that is in the clinic that will ultimately reflect on social media, in their website, in their articles, and wherever else they post digital content. Unless that happens, and unless that personality is in sync with it, and in that ethical sense in sync with it, this may not give the desired result, is what I will. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You've spoken like a true homeopath, right? So at the end of the day, it's all individualization. We are all not the same. We all have different aspects to us. I think it's true. It's where you were coming from, where your journey has been. That's the kind of colors that you'll decide for your logo. That's the kind of theme that you'll pick for your website. That's the kind of articles that you'll write. That's the kind of closing statements that you will have. And Master has mentioned something about the doctor becoming, doctor being healed as part of the healing journey, right? It's right there in the organon. So the more we practice homeopathy, the more we truly stick to that science with all earnesty, the more we heal, the more our personality evolves over a period of time. And it's an extension of who we are. It's also important about, there's a quote about you're the average of the 5 people you're in touch with, most in touch with, right? So if all the 5 people you have are constantly cribbing about something, you're bound to kind of feel equally frustrated with the scenario and feel a certain sense of angst. If I sit with a group of doctors and every doctor is going to be like, "Arey yaar, aajkal patient log bahut sawal puchte hain," you will become apprehensive the next time a patient is across and is going to ask a question. Like, "Kya hai? Bahut Google karke aaye ho?" That becomes right. So you have to understand that the scenario has changed. The digital world has changed, and therefore doctors will also have to sit and sometimes go through the AI to understand what are the answers AI is throwing, so you can give those answers back. Coincidentally, last 2 days I was at a major conference, and there's a new term we learned, meaning we knew, but they were talking that most doctors, the patients are coming and asking, "Doctor, do you indulge in DTX?" And doctors are like, "What is DTX?" Right? DTX is now the term that is digital therapeutics. So I'm leaving this on this note. Hopefully this can be a topic for later. But for all the doctors who are tuned in today, you're going to have, it's already started. Patients are already coming up and asking DTX, and we are not ready for it, right? So we need to kind of learn some new things rather than look at the patient as an enemy, which we should never, right? And take it up as a challenge to improve ourselves to there. Yeah, I understand there would be a lot we would want to, but frankly, I think this is just something that you and me would enjoy talking about. You should look at what the audience wants. Maybe you guys can, all those who are tuned in, can comment or drop in a message later what you would like to hear us discuss the next time. And maybe we can take it up from there whenever we are ready next.
Agreed. So I would request Dr. Suraj to give us all a take-home message. But before that, if there are any questions, we'll take a minute or so for you to type in those questions. And of course, for those who are going to watch it later, you can always DM Dr. Suraj. He will also give his contact details where you can contact him for getting the answer to those queries. And yes, another request for all of us is that, see, this lecture is actually for the entire medical community, not just for homeopathic doctors. But particularly for homeopathic doctors, because I'm myself a homeopath, I am going to revise this lecture couple of more times because there has been a lot of technicality that is involved, something that we were never taught in medical school. So I will not talk about the allopathic doctors because I don't know what is the situation over there. But yes, for the homeopathic doctors, I will say at least listen to this lecture at least 2 to 3 times. I'll tell you very personally, I am not an MBA, but I will tell you this is a very MBA grade lecture, something that you will learn in the business schools. I hope I've assessed it right.
It's probably yeah. I think we have
Yes.
Dr. Darshan, who's an orthopedic. Hi, Darshan. Thank you for the comment. And so when you're just saying, I mean, we've had the good fortune to interact with doctors from all fields with technomedics. So that's always been great. Thanks, Darshan, for tuning in. So where to find the playback of this video? I think you will have to answer that.
So it will be posted on both Dr. Suraj Dhirwani as well as HomeoMitra's wall, and you can watch the review of the video over there.
Uh, I think we'll just start summarizing the take-home messages.
Yes.
And from I think yes, the thanks so much, Darshan. We've definitely diverted. I mean, it did go a little bit off track, I feel. If you're talking of core content, and thank you for being so kind for reminding others to tune into this again. But when we're talking of content, like we mentioned, whether you're a orthopedic, whether you're an ENT, whether you are a physiotherapist, whether you are a homeopath, whether you are a cardiologist, whether you're a respiratory specialist, whether you're starting a new clinic altogether, you've just graduated, you're part of the digital community, you were always active on Instagram even while you were in college because that's the new generation, right? Or you are a 45-year-old, 50-year-old who's been into practice, and now the younger generation also wants to come and they want to start with a digital presence for the clinic as a whole, as a brand. Sometimes you are you've recently got married and you've shifted cities, like we've had instance of someone going to Bangalore and then starting all the way from scratch from there, finding it very difficult, and you want to make yourself known there. Or you got married into a doctor family that was already present in somewhere, like Indore or Ranchi. We've had cases and they already were set there, but now you want to add your name to it, right? That there were two doctors and now you are also part. Of course the board changes. So content, when you are creating, you have these as a take home message. Remember, content is not just what goes on your website. Of course it's your website, it's also your Google page, it's also your Facebook page, it's also your Instagram bio. If you are on Twitter, it's also LinkedIn at times. Don't forget that. It's also what you put as part of your WhatsApp business. Many doctors have now realized it's better to be on WhatsApp business, if nothing, just for that quick away message. Content is also what your receptionist greets your patients with. It's also the disclaimers that you put out in the clinic. There's a whole lot of content that goes out there. The services that you offer, you've got a new machine in your clinic and you want to talk about it. How are you going to put it across to the patient in a layman language such that they understand the importance and beauty of that machine? How are you going to keep it concise such that they can forward it to someone who might need that particular service or machine, right? You've done a new course on hypnotherapy. You want to talk of that and at the same time raise awareness about that. Nutrition is a whole different field altogether. So content is part of all of this. It helps to have some guidance, and this is not self-marketing, but this is what we've done, and we know others also who do this. HomeoMitra has been a great mitra to a lot of people in advising them to not kind of stay focused. So it's okay, everyone does not know everything. I myself don't know a lot of things. I went to learn coding, I went to do MBA, but everyone, you can't be there, right? So I also have my digital marketing experts whom I refer to. I also have my social media experts whom we deal with. I have my SEO team who kind of analyzes and gives us the best algorithm what is required. And of course we have editors who kind of take care of the English and AI tools and whatnot. So it's okay to take a very structured approach. Be very sure who your target audience is. Be very sure why you're putting it out there. Have a focused strategy. Budget it well over a long period. Don't just do a blitzkrieg like a 1 month blast and you're gone from social media. Don't do that. Doesn't work. So focus little but often, be consistent, and at the risk of sounding philosophical again, be true to yourself. Be ethical in what you do. It pays in the long run. It pays significantly better in the long run. Don't be very myopic in your vision for growth. Being a doctor is a lifelong journey. You're going to see patients forever and ever, and most of us hope to not retire and keep working. So it's the brand of yourself that you're building from day one. Whatever the breaks in between, whether you go for higher studies, whether you have a maternity leave of sorts, whether a pandemic hits, whether you have migration, you continue being a doctor wherever you are. And thanks to the digital world now, we can continue practicing from across the world, like we are connecting today, rather than sitting in a seminar hall and discussing this and taking open questions. So this is great. And I think this is the message. Be focused. Content is something serious. You can be a part of it. You can approach someone to take some advice on it, but keep it structured, keep it consistent, and please, please, please keep it ethical. It will help us all.
Great. On that note, I thank Dr. Suraj for spending his precious time with all of us and sharing such insightful and practically useful knowledge, so which we can take it up in our practice, in our profession. And hopefully, like I said, there were many offshoots to the lecture today, and we will take up those topics if the audience wishes so in the coming HomeoMitra Vartaalap.
Yeah, only if the audience wishes so, because otherwise we can keep talking all night, but it's what the audience wants, right?